Resume recording. There we go. And that way we can make it available to all those that can't be here for today. But so feel free to unmute, raise your hand, and absolutely be part of the conversation today, because it'd be pretty boring to listen to me the whole time. All right. So before we commence, I'm on Wurundjeri land today, and I just want to acknowledge people of the Wurundjeri country and people of the Kulin Nation. And I'm paying my respects to wherever you are coming in from today. I know we're not all Melbourne based, we're coming in from around the country. This is a picture of our beautiful Yarra River here in Melbourne. It doesn't always look so beautiful. Sometimes it's all kinds of shades of different murky browns and greens. But if you do get a chance to live near it or be near it, it's always a nice reminder just to connect to country. Start of a week, as we've said, we've got kids going back, from school holidays. We've got the week starting. Maybe you're coming back from a break too. And it's just nice to be able to ground yourself a bit and just connect in with whatever you need to connect in today. So that's a reminder for you to do that only if you need it today. All right. So what are we covering over the next 55 minutes or so? We are going to leave some time for Q&A. We're going to be looking at AI, and it's a thinking partner, right? I know that so many of us are using it, but where is it actually weakening our opportunity to give really great feedback? So I'm all for using it, as you will hear today, but I also think we need to be careful in how we use it. So it's actually not weakening, but actually strengthening our position to give feedback to anyone. It could be a work colleague, it could be someone in your personal life, doesn't matter who it is, but how can we actually use it to strengthen? We're going to look at, how do we think before we prompt? Did you know prompt engineer is one of the fastest growing jobs on the planet? If you don't know what that is, it is people that come up with very clever prompts and basically instructions for AI. It's a cool job, right? Who knew that would be a job? But there is some, I guess some science in how we prompt it. So we're going to go through that today. How do we turn it into a thinking partner? I got off a call with some people today in an organization where it is still absolutely banned, which just makes me go, huh? Because people will be grabbing their phones and using it, of course. There's probably good reason. We do need governance around AI when we are using it. But it can actually be a very strategic thinking partner for us. So how do we use it for that? And then we are going to focus on feedback today because it's in the title, and how do we actually say what needs to be said? And so I'll give you a feedback model towards the end to use if you need it. Plenty of time for some Q&A too. So Liz Fosslien is a favourite of mine, and Chris Hartman, who is on this call, but he's muted and screen off. But I came across Liz Fosslien's work at AEMO when I was delivering some stuff for Chris and the team there a couple of years ago. And if you follow Liz on socials, you will see that she posts up these beautiful little graphics on all sorts of topics. But this is one that she shared on LinkedIn just the other day, and I love it. And I thought this is really very, very apt for what we're talking about today, because it is the spiral of AI adoption. And so as you are looking through that, I am curious around where you might locate yourself in the spiral. Is there a spot? Is there a spot where you locate yourself? And let us know in the chat. Jay, I've just made you co-host. If you could attend to the doorbell, please, because they're coming through thick and fast. That's awesome. Where are you on spiral? This is fun. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Chelsea. My mum said a little while ago, not quite the other day, but she can't quite say AI, and that is because she still has an Italian accent. So it kind of all comes, like the A and the I in Italian comes out a little bit the same, right? So she says I, or she'll go A or A-R. Anyway, she's probably like, what is it? What does it do? She might look at it for a little recipe every time to time. This morning, someone told me they were looking at it. So they were paving their garden, and they uploaded a picture of what they had done in their garden. And between AI, so chat and YouTube, they have got all the instructions they need to, as a bit of a DIY job. Chat actually picked up from the picture that they uploaded that they needed to put the string, like that's not a very technical term. And those of you that are like, yeah, Rena, that's not what it's called. But, you know, when you put the string up to make sure you get the levels right and the actual measurements right. And that was all chat. So, oh, wow. Yep. Excellent. All right. Has anyone got a bit of an identity crisis from it? No one's at the, am I what I do? Now what do I do? What am I? You can see there though. Excellent. I can do what I do. Yeah, excellent. All right. So you can see though from this that as we spiral all the way through, we get closer to the center. We can, if we give it too much power and too much license, we can get to the point where we do then have an identity crisis around what am I? What am I here to do? Do we still need humans? All of that, right? Now that's a bit doomy and gloomy, but at the end of it, there is that ability to learn, and I can do something new. Is where we come out the other end, where we're not in the spiral anymore, and we're actually taking control of it. So as we're talking about the use of it today, and I'm going to caveat this section by saying I'm not a technical expert. Julian, you're on notice for any technical questions. No, I'm joking. Julian is a technical expert. But so I'm not a technical expert, but I do think that there's absolute power for most of us that are leaders around how we can use it actually as a thinking and research partner. All right, so there's a shout out to Liz Fossling too. When my slide moves. All right. So I've got a little bit of connection to the health sector, and I've worked in it for a very, very long time. I started my career actually in health, not as a health practitioner, but actually in the world of HR. And that was now over 25 years ago. And now, you know, kind of full loop, the last 7 years, I've been on the board at Peninsula Health down at Frankston. And we are always, as a health institute, looking at ways to use AI. Now, clinicians, do I have any clinicians on? Raise your hand if you are a clinician, because I'd love to hear your view on this. But clinicians get very, very nervous, and rightly so, when, you know, we start talking about giving patient data to AI and, you know, feeding clinical notes to it, even from a summary perspective, right? So we're not even talking about diagnosis through AI because, gosh, you wouldn't, if you're a clinician, that would be super disrespectful. We need doctors. Doctors and clinicians and nurses are wonderful, wonderful people. But there is some studies that have been done in the last couple of years around how AI can actually bring a little bit more of that empathetic approach to the way the clinicians work. Now, I don't want to for a second here suggest that clinicians are not empathetic, but we know from data, even in our own hospital, that often when you are patient, so bedside, supporting patients, and this doesn't, you know, think even allied health, we're not just talking about kind of hospital settings, but even as, you know, I'm talking everything from podiatrists, naturopaths, dietitians, GPs, all the way through to hospitals. There is a lot going on, right? You're listening to what the patient is telling you. You are often there, you know, there's pain, distress. That's why they go and see the health professional, right? And very rarely because everything's great unless it's a checkup. But what has been missing a lot of the time is this empathetic approach where we're really making that connection. And I'm not going to get into the structure of the health system, but we know that our GPs in particular, and even within hospital settings, people are pressed for time. So it is not that these clinicians don't want to spend the time building that relationship with their patients. It is simply that they do not have the time a lot of the time. So what we found, what this study and these studies have found, is that AI can actually support these workers to offer a much more empathetic response because they've got the AI tool taking the notes for them. They are then providing the diagnoses for the patient. They're still doing that, so that's their practical primary work. But in terms of taking the notes, making sure that they've covered everything, all the procedural things that come with being a clinician, the heavy lifting from that can actually be done through AI. So this is one study out of probably thousands that exist. It caught my eye because it is within the health sector, which is, you know, a sector that I've got, you know, a lot of time for, obviously, and a big passion area of mine. But I think if we can use AI, particularly in these clinician settings, to lead to clearer, more thoughtful feedback, better communication, and a more empathetic approach, then I reckon we're winning. And it's taking that pressure off some of those clinicians. So we know that AI can strengthen that human connection, and it's often because we are so relational as humans, it's hard to imagine a world where the tech can actually strengthen this human connection, but it does have the ability to do so. And so I wanted to start with that as a frame today, really to look at, well, what is possible? What industries are using it? and how they are using it. So now let's have a think and a look at, these are just some headlines that I've grabbed, very recent headlines, and some not so recent. Some are now a year on, but I wanted to share them with you. So the first one is this one here from The Australian. That was only last week on Thursday. And this article here talks about really how do we partner with AI? So rather than look at it from a deficit perspective around gaps and, what it's taking away and productivity and all that stuff, which is the article down below in The Guardian, how can we actually partner with it? This is interesting, right? So if you're not already there, then how do we get AI to really consider it as, and I've talked to you today a little bit about a thinking partner, maybe a research partner, but imagine that it's there, kind of metaphorically sitting there as a colleague, as opposed to a system. So that's a piece out of The Australian. In The Guardian, this is not just The Guardian, but there's heaps on productivity. Has everyone heard the term work slop? If you haven't, it's everywhere. So basically there's a lot of, a lot that can be produced through AI, but it's not, when we know some of it's pretty poor quality. So whilst on the surface it can look like it's improving productivity, it's actually creating more rework, because then this work slop has to be fixed, right? You would have all, and I haven't put this article up, but you would have all seen the refund that Deloitte had to provide to a government department because the report that was generated was largely AI with a lot of errors in it. So this, whilst it might look like it's boosting productivity, there's a whole heap that's happening that means we're actually slowing it down because we've got to go and fix things up. And then the one in the top right I wanted to share with you. This is from last year, but Accenture globally went and created a feedback tool. And I thought this is very apt for today because we're talking about feedback and how we can use AI. But it created this feedback tool that looked fantastic when they launched it, right? And everyone was very excited. And what they found after a period of time was that it got some things right, but it started to get a little bit sloppy. The quality wasn't there. It started to be very generic sounding. It's kind of like when in an organisation everyone drinks the same Kool-Aid and has got the same kind of tagline. There wasn't really much quality coming out. So the chief people officer who's interviewed in this particular article that AOL published talks about what they did. So they didn't just can it and go, all right, we've tried it, doesn't work. They've now made enhancements to that system so it can be used to achieve better quality. And you'll know from maybe your own experience that the more you use it and the more you can help it understand the way you communicate, the type of language that you use, the better the quality is in terms of what you're going to get out of it. So I have a question for you. Where are you using AI in feedback right now? And I don't mean like now, this moment, but like in the last few months. And maybe if you don't have an example of right now, where are you thinking about using it? Just pop it in the chat. I am assuming we're going to have some Microsoft Copilot licenses, people that have got some exposure to that or to those tools. I'd love to know if you've built your own tool. Is it your organisation or you personally? Beautiful. Hey, Sean, I know you're on no screen and no video, so you might, good, hello, how you doing? Are you using Copilot to help with email editing and notes and things? Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Chelsea's using AI agent for coaching. Definitely would love to know more. Chelsea, are you able to unmute? Tell us how you're using it there. If you can. Chelsea might not be able to right now. But that's very cool. So, there are these coach in the pocket kind of tools where people can go in and ask it questions, no worries at all. Tech issues, so Copilot. Haley's using it to curate and give key themes of peer feedback. Excellent for direct reports. Yeah, good. So we're using it. We're using it a little bit. Mainly, probably, I'd say just from the thread to kind of support, maybe not so much feedback, but support bits and pieces. Bit of email editing, notes. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Okay. Has anyone got like not going near it whatsoever? You don't have to say why. All right. So everyone's kind of well, unless you don't want to say, yeah, but maybe an adopter or maybe at least a, uh, a user of some sort. Excellent. All right. Um, so Copilot obviously is going to be, if you've got a license with your organization, I've got a lot of other clients that use it. Some are now moving towards platforms like Claude, where you're moving more into that agentic AI. So rather than just feeding it a question and giving you an answer, that agentic AI is really, doing things like booking your feedback appointment with your person. Maybe it's got access to your calendar. Maybe it's drafting an email that then it sends on your behalf and you might see a draft of it before it goes. So there's lots of different ways that we can start to use it. Excellent. Maybe, you're not where Accenture is. So Accenture does have a tool, as do many other organizations. But it is good just to get a bit of a lay of the land of how people are using it. All right. So I reckon, though, that in feedback, whether we're talking AI or not, there is still a struggle, right? So I'm hoping that by the end of today, you're starting to think about how AI might reduce this struggle for you. But most people struggle with feedback, not because they don't care to give the feedback or because they don't want to give the feedback, but often it's they don't have the time to do it well. And doing it well is not just about the conversation, it's also the preparation that goes into, crafting a conversation to the extent that you can craft a conversation, because obviously it's two-way. It's going to have that conversational kind of base to it where you can only prepare your bit and you don't know how the person's going to respond, right? So you can have the best laid plan, but then not necessarily know what you're going to get in terms of a response. So because we often don't have the time, it gets rushed, and that getting rushed might look like, well, rather than have the conversation, I'm just going to send the person a text or an email. I hope you're not doing that to deliver feedback, but sometimes there might be some good reasons why you think that is appropriate. Sometimes we don't have a moment at the actual moment to give the feedback, so we might delay it. We might think to ourselves, well, I've got a one-on-one coming up with that person next week, so I'll wait to have the conversation then. And that's obviously going to have an impact. Sometimes we try and soften it, in feedback sandwiches, and please don't use those if you are using a feedback sandwich. That's kind of good, bad, good. We often soften the message because of our level of discomfort with delivering what we might typically consider, a hard message or a difficult message. Now, when we're softening it, we're losing complete meaning, right? So we often will leave confusing the person as opposed to providing that clarity. So there is a bit of a struggle. Do you agree? Can I just have a bit of a thumbs up if you agree that there is still a bit of a struggle? And I don't think it helps when we still refer to feedback conversation, like as difficult conversations. I really think that mentally that kind of sets us up for, oh, this is going to be bad, which no one wants to go into a conversation feeling that, right? So yes, the struggle is there, but now we have this thing called AI. So is that going to be the magic pill that makes it all better? Let's have a look. So AI, we know it's already shaping feedback. You might have already gone in, at some point or another and kind of, I need to have a conversation with someone about this. How should I phrase it? How should I start it? It is shaping the way that we give feedback. We're going to look at that in a second. Couple of studies that I want to refer to by Microsoft and LinkedIn. So 2024, they released the Work Trend Index report, and then McKinsey, and that's a great article there on the state of AI, even though now it's getting on to 18 months old. But what they found is 75% of global knowledge workers were using AI. Now, we've already established that even in this with our very, very, very small sample size. But whether you've got, whatever tools available to you, we're already starting to use it. But this is what is like, wow, approximately 1% of that audience actually feel mature in how they use it. Now, granted, even if that was 18 months ago, that percentage might have increased, but 1% is a really low base to start from, right? And if, in the conversations I'm having with organizations, and you might agree or not, I'd love to know in the chat, our level of maturity is still not really commensurate with how fast the tech is moving and what it actually can do for us. And therefore, the adoption is fast. Our accessibility to the tools are there. Like there's nothing. You just jump on, open a browser, and you're there in ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or whatever tool you're using. But our capability is still not there. And that's really what's creating the work slop, the lack actually of productivity, and this very generic flavored, kind of commentary that we're getting from AI. Now, as I was thinking about this, I was like, so a little while ago, I reckon I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, my family and I decided it was time to move into the frontier of HelloFresh. Do I have any HelloFresh people on the call, or Marley Spoon, or whatever it is? I don't even know the most recent ones, but any of those kind of food boxes that arrive at your home, you don't have to do any of the shopping, right? So I don't mind sometimes shopping on a Sunday. I shop with my AirPods in, and I might listen to a podcast or something. But anyway, when HelloFresh came out, yeah, I used them for a while. Nicola, I want to come back to you for a second, because so did we. And at the start, it was great because I just jump on a website, maybe I want to say once a fortnight. You order your meal boxes. You can order for as many people as you like. It was easy. The meals were there. They were kind of interesting. It reduced the mental load and it meant no shopping. Nicola, you use them. Do you mind unmuting if you can, wherever you are? You use them for a while. Are you still
Unmuted.
Are you still using them?
No, I stopped. I didn't. There was too much packaging for starters. And their idea of it only takes 15 to 30 minutes was in reality about an hour. So but I did keep their recipe cards and sometimes I still use.
Very agree. The Korean bibimbap is great if you've got one. That's a favorite in my house. We did the same thing. Over time, it got boring. Like the family like sweet potato in every meal. I love sweet potato. It doesn't need to be in every meal. There was no I feel like today. So at least when you've got, maybe, if you're responsible for doing a supermarket shop, or if you are responsible, well, maybe you and other people have got some adult kids now, they still don't do it. But opening up the fridge and going, oh, okay, we've got lamb, we've got chicken, or we've got whatever, right? And you can still have that I feel like this, even though you've got your stuff in your fridge. There was none of that with HelloFresh. I mean, you could swap a day, but then it might mean that you're having sweet potato 5 nights in the, out of 7. There was a real lack of variety. It led to some food waste. And to Nicola's point, there is a lot of packaging. It got very repetitive, exactly, Sean, right? So I reckon that when ChatGPT came out, and it was probably the end of, I want to say 22, where I got my first article from a colleague that went, oh my gosh, check this out. And now I feel like I've had a bit of a HelloFresh moment where I went, oh, this is great. And then it's like, oh, this is not so great. And it's not because the tools are not great. It's my capacity to use them effectively and actually use them as a thinking partner is limited. So I've got to up my game in how I'm using it. Now, in this analogy here, I might try a different, meal service provider. I might look at, spend a bit more time on the website, making sure I'm choosing dishes without sweet potato. There's probably things that I could do. And it's absolutely not to, HelloFresh, I think, is great. If you're using it, fantastic. Shout out to HelloFresh people. But I just think that over time, we can get into the same rush with the AI tools where we go, yeah, it's great, and now it's lost its shine. So how do we make sure that it's still being effective for us? But before we do that, it would be remiss of me to not share a little bit about the risk, right? So this is the disclaimer that comes with using it. Ready? This is a great piece, actually, if you want to dive into the research by MIT in the States, that they did a big piece of research, and they looked at, what's happening to the sizes of our brain, what's happening physiologically, what's happening to our thinking. And we know, it's a little bit like using HelloFresh forever. I imagine whilst it's all nutritionally based, I imagine there's going to be different markers that will show up different things if you're using it all the time. It's like that person that ate McDonald's for 33 days or whatever it was. Do you remember that study? And all sorts of things, that happened. We know that if we use it too much and basically we outsource the thinking, the size of the brain is going to shrink. And a colleague of mine, Alessandra Edwards, recently I was having a conversation with her and she said, Rita, we need to continue to do things every day that make our brains hurt. So whatever that is for you, Oh, I love that, Sean. That just caught my attention. AI to create a meal list in the shopping list. Yes, we could do our own version of HelloFresh. We need to do things every day that make our brains hurt. So whatever that is for you, right? So whether it's puzzles, whether it's, you know, rather than opening up the ChatGPT window straight away, do a little bit of your own thinking first and then feed it and prompt it based on your level of thinking. You will get a much better result by doing that as opposed to outsourcing the thinking to it completely. Um, so we want to make sure that we're kind of exercising, our brain and we're still using it. We want to make sure that our quality is still there and we're not coming up, with very generic, substandard really feedback, and conversation points and questions with people. So we do want it to use it as a thinking partner, but we have to be careful that if we use it too much, it actually does have some significant impacts for us. Okay. So where we want to really get to is going from automated. So automated is, completely on demand. It's easy, it's simplified. I feed it stuff and, it gives me something. And we want to go augmented. And augmented for me, the difference here is that I use it as a thinking partner. I'm not just typing in a question and it gives me something and then I go and use it. I'm using it to have a conversation, whether that's typed or not. I'm using it to bounce some ideas. I am critically thinking still for my university colleagues on the call, but I'm still critically thinking and actually saying, well, hang on a minute. I've looked at this, this, this. What can you tell me about it? What am I missing here? What should I be including? So we don't want it just to be automated. The point here is that we don't get to just automation, but we actually get to augmentation with it. So having an AI tool is not going to fix all our feedback problems because we saw just earlier on that a lot of the time what gets in the way of giving great feedback is time. And then also our level of discomfort, either delivering what we perceive to be difficult message or maybe softening it too much. Maybe we delay giving that feedback as we saw. So AI is not going to fix any of that. And in fact, it's going to hide and mask a lot of the problems that we have already with giving feedback. So AI is going to give you a whole bunch of really great kind of words. It'll give you, if you ask it to give you 400 words, that's what it's going to give you. If you say, give me 20 words, that's what it's going to give you. It will operate within the parameters that you set. It's not going to be really looking for high quality unless you prompt it to do so with a baseline in mind. So a lot of those additional words is why we get this terminology work slop. And it's because, it's trying to avoid really, by giving us, a few extra words and, maybe some fancy words thrown in there, but really over talking it. It will try and sound polished. And so you'll go, oh, wow, there's 400 words. There's whatever it is that I've needed to create. Great. But it's not going to cover and uncover or really speak to that real problem. That unclear thinking can sound quite structured. So if we are unclear in what our messaging needs to be to the person that we're having the conversation with, AI is just going to give us a bunch of words. It can help us to sort them, but it's not really going to help us to achieve that clarity. And then this notion of weak feedback that sounds professional. So all in all, these 3 dot points, it's going to be dressed up to be something that effectively it's not. And that is where a lot of us will default to use it as a tool, but then not, because it's quick, we're probably not spending enough time really digesting it and then critically evaluating it and really thinking about, is this really what I want to say? So before we get any further, I want to take us all the way back to basics. And if you've done some work with me, you may have seen this slide. I think when we're giving feedback, there's 2 things I usually talk about with feedback, and that is our feedback reaction and our feedback intention. And for today's session, because it is about crafting feedback with AI, I wanted to focus on our feedback intention. Now, this is before you even go anywhere near an AI tool, right? So this is you with a piece of paper. Remember paper and pens, like those things we used to use, I don't know, electronic, whatever you're using, or dictating it in. But this is about you just sitting there thinking, before I give this feedback to somebody, before I initiate this conversation, what is my intention? What am I trying to create? What is the experience that I would like this person to have as a result of this feedback? What is the feeling that I would like them to feel as a result of giving them this feedback? Now, we have no control over the experience and we have no control over the feeling. However, our intention and our delivery, the words that we use, the timing of the conversation, all of it is absolutely going to impact the way that the person feels as a result of receiving that feedback. Now, I reckon that there are lots of things that we can intend to do with feedback. And this is just a short little summary, right? We can choose to inform somebody. Maybe we want to make them aware, illuminate a blind spot. Hey, did you know that? Whatever. We might want to initiate an idea. Maybe it's a thought starter. Maybe they're a stakeholder that we want to influence. Maybe we want to create some impact. Impact can be positive, but also like bang. I want to get into a robust conversation with you about something. Maybe we want to do that. Maybe we want to inoculate them, so protect them from something. Maybe we've observed their behavior or we've observed an interaction with someone else and we want to let them know about that. Maybe we just want to irritate them because we don't like them very much. Surely that's nobody on this call. But we might, right? So there are lots of things that we can intend to do when we are giving feedback. And I think that for many of us, and I'm interested whether you're doing this or not, I don't think enough of us think about the intention. I think we just go straight to delivering the message. And the message is great, but the problem with the message is that that's just the world according to you, to the feedback that you've got to give. Whereas when you step back and you go, well, what is my intention? Ultimately, as a result of me giving this feedback, what am I looking for as an intended outcome? So I'm inviting you, even before we touch any AI tools, to really think about what's my intention with this feedback. Because I think when we can focus on the intention, we can prompt AI better, we can think about the type of conversation that we want to have in a much more thoughtful way, ultimately demonstrating that care to the person. True story, last week I had a colleague call and she was in really not a very good state because her leader, who is the CEO of an organisation she reports directly in, had given her some feedback which was really, really harsh. Now, this is a high performer in an organisation, part of the executive group, has really had so many wins. So always getting really raving positive feedback. And to receive this very harsh email from her CEO really shocked her. So she called and she said, I don't know what to do with this. And she called me because I've been doing some work with them and I know the CEO quite well. She said, I don't know what to do with this. And I said, right, so what do you want to do with it? I talked it through. She kind of vented for about 10, 15 minutes. And then I suggested that she actually go and approach the CEO and ask the CEO what the intention was with the feedback. And she's like, can I really do that? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I think that could be a helpful question. And so she did. She went off and had that conversation and she called back and she said she was very grateful because she said, did you know that when I asked them about what was their intention, they stopped and looked at me a bit blankly and went, oh, I didn't realize. And they didn't backtrack on their feedback, but they did at that point go, oh my gosh, the penny has dropped around my approach in how I've given this feedback to this individual, an executive member of my leadership team who's a star performer. This is actually what I've done as a result of me delivering that feedback that way. They were oblivious. They had no idea. Now, this is not because they're a terrible person. They're a lovely person and they do care about their people. But it was in a moment of rush and I've got to deliver this. And I'm not going to go and talk to the person. I'm just going to deliver it via an email. So all those things that we talked about in terms of that feedback struggle got in the way, and it meant that the intention was not considered at all. There's some trust, there are some trust issues that have now occurred as a result of that circumstance for both of them. And that will rebuild over time. I've got no doubt that that's going to rebuild over time, but you'd want to avoid that where you can. So, CEOs are busy people. I'm sure many of you work for them. We're all busy people, irrespective of whether you're the CEO or not. So thinking about your feedback intention, I'm not suggesting that you spend a week or even an hour actually thinking about your feedback intention. This is 5 minutes. This is 2 minutes. What's the intention I'm trying to create here? Okay, what I want to do is actually influence their thinking. Great. So based on that now, I know what my aim is in terms of this conversation. That means the path for me to plan this conversation is going to take a very different tact. So just all it takes is a couple of minutes. And what you can do is just ask yourself the question, what's my feedback intention? What am I intending to do as a result of this? And it could just be I need to deliver a message. I need to inform them about their impact because of the way they're behaving, whatever it is, right? So feedback intentions. Now, even again, so this is still back in basic territory. We've thought about our intentions. We're not even going near a ChatGPT window right now or Copilot. Before you prompt, and I'm going to share some prompt cheat sheets with you in a moment, I would recommend that you ask yourself, what do I actually think about, this situation, the feedback that I need to give, why we are in this scenario? What am I avoiding? And you might, as a result of that, go, I'm actually not avoiding anything. Good. But just ask yourself the question because there might be something that you're not aware of. And what needs to change? What's the outcome that I'm looking for? So we've done our feedback intention. Then we've asked ourselves these questions. Then you're allowed to go and open up ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever. Of course, you can open it up at any time. But I reckon there's some preparatory work before we even go anywhere near these platforms. And then when you are going in to using them, I would encourage you to think about it as a thinking partner. Actually, before I go to the next bit. So I recently started a PhD. So that's this year. And I'm doing it through, so shout out Julian to Griffith University. I'm doing it through Griffith University, where Julian is based. I have had a really great conversation with both my supervisors, my primary and my co-supervisor recently, on how to use ChatGPT or, these kinds of tools in my PhD work. Because I've got two of my older kids are now university students. I've got one who's doing commerce engineering and loves ChatGPT and will proudly say, yeah, Chat wrote that and I've just fixed it up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So at grad level, like fingers crossed, right? For when they hit grad level. I have my other child who will not use it because of the environmental impacts of using it and because just ethically opposed to it. So as I have now gone into the fray of, kind of higher education again, I'm like, how do I use it now? Because it's a long time since I've done, any post-grad work anyway. And the conversation with the supervisors is absolutely use it. But where we got to is it's a research and a thinking partner. So use it, get it to summarize articles, get it to help you prepare conversations, but use it as a thinking partner, like a sounding board. And that's very different to using it as the font of all knowledge shall come from here. Don't give it your power. Right. And if we're not giving it our power, then we're also reducing some of those risks that we saw earlier on about what it can do when there's an over-reliance on it. So absolutely use it as a thinking partner. So when we actually get then, so we've done our feedback intention. What is our intention with this conversation? We've asked ourselves those questions before we've gone near a ChatGPT window. Now we can go in, use it as a thinking partner. So what it will do for us, it's going to help us to prepare the message, but we still need to deliver the impact. So my key message here is, obviously don't print out a script, even though it will give you a script. It will then say to you, would you like talking points? Would you like some questions? I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's kind of like, would you like fries with that, right? It will continue to do this. Be very, very tight on your brief to it. The tighter you can be and the better your prompts are, the better the quality is going to be. So if you're then kind of going, great, here's my feedback script, and you deliver it like a script, you're not going to get any change from that person. Very, very unlikely, unless they are very self-aware and, emotionally mature and emotionally intelligent and the rest of it. But when you're using it as a thinking partner, then it becomes a genuine conversation. And then we've got increase in trust and growth. So we don't want to have this conversation gap. We want to make sure that we're closing that gap, and we want to make sure that we're using it appropriately, not scripted, and really just using it to prompt our thoughts and really help us to prepare. When we are then giving feedback, And these are some of my clients when we were down in Anglesey recently, and they were doing some work on giving each other some feedback in a trio. But when we are giving feedback, every message needs to answer, I believe, these 3 points. So what's changing as a result of us having this conversation? Get the commitment from them. What's changing? By when? What are the timeframes that we're looking at? And this is not you dictating the timeframes. This is a conversation. And what does good look like? Like once these changes are implemented, what can we expect? What are we looking for? And again, these are all conversational. Now, so not you dictating, but making it a conversation. This clarity is going to drive performance. It's going to drive outcomes. It means we're not just having nice conversations or, even conversations we're trying to avoid. We're then getting some concrete outcomes as a result. So remember that clarity is going to drive that performance. If you're feeling ambiguous, they are going to be feeling even more ambiguous. And you can see how that ambiguity, if you have fed a ho-hum kind of prompt into ChatGPT, it's giving you I'm just going to pick ChatGPT, that might not be the tool you're using, and it's giving you back something substandard. You're not going to have clarity in that. So be really, really careful with the prompts. I'm going to get to the prompts in a minute. I quickly just wanted to touch on trust. So in the era of, like 10 years ago, or even 5 or maybe 2 years ago, we would look at a picture that's in the media and we wouldn't for a second guess whether that was a real picture or not, would we? But now we do. We look at images and we go, oh my gosh, is that real? Or is that just a doctored image? Is that an AI image? Is that something that's been created? Because they are of such high quality. So trust in this era of AI, I think, has never been more important, but it's hard to know what to trust. Now, when you're prompting it in a generic way, you're not giving it much. What it gives you back is going to be generic. It's going to be scripted. It doesn't feel like you. It's not going to at all reflect who you are. So you want your personality in it. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't sound like you, it's not going to land, right? They're going to kind of go, yep, great. I'm just going through a process, and they will feel like they're going through a process. So if you've done work with me before, you would have seen this. It's a trust equation from The Trusted Advisor. Long, long time ago, this book was written. But it's still worth just remembering that when you are giving this feedback, whether you're using AI as a thinking partner or not, always just consider that you are hopefully trying to do what you can to maximize trust and actually to build trust. So are you focused on credibility? So reading from a script that does not even sound like you is going to impact your credibility. Because in there's a lack of care, right? It's not about the person. And maybe you do care because you've gone to the trouble of using the tool, but that's not enough. You want it really to be credible. It's got to sound like you. The reliability, in this instance, is about the person being able to rely on you to give them the feedback. Do you have their back? Do you care enough that if you notice something, you are going to give them that feedback? And then the intimacy is about the quality and the frequency of connection. So you're having your one-on-ones with them. Are you giving them feedback that's both, positive and constructive? So not just calling out the constructive things and when things aren't going so well, but also calling out, shout out when they're not, or when they are doing something great. You're also giving them that. And that's that intimacy factor that helps to build trust. And if we're doing all of that, not only through or for ourselves, but we're actually doing it with the other person in mind, and we know that trust is not built because I need something from you, then we'll have trust. So it's just a little reminder around trust, and particularly in this day and age where we really need to think twice before we can trust something that we see, even if it's documented with a very fancy logo on it, right? Deloitte has had to refund a government department because the data could not be trusted. It had errors also, and that's been well documented. All right, ready for it? It's probably where you get your cameras out if you want. These are some AI prompts. So this is a cheat sheet for you. When you are thinking about feedback, these are some good prompts. I won't say they're excellent, but they're good prompts that I think you could use to help you really get a carefully crafted message that is clear and that really has that person in mind. The intention here is that we probably want to inform someone of something, right? Now, before we even get to the 10 prompts, and you can read them, I won't read them to you, but we've got to give the tool that we're using, the AI, as much context as possible. Now, I know that you will have some governance, rules in your organization, which means you can't feed, personal information in for good reason. So give it as much context as possible, preserving anonymity also. So don't use real names. I don't need to tell you about all that. I'm sure you've got some governance frameworks in your organizations around how to best use AI. But the better the context you can give it, then the better the quality is going to be in terms of what it gives you back. So this context, I imagine you're going to do a nice little paragraph on what the situation is first for the AI tool, and then you probably start with one of these questions, and you just kind of keep feeding it through. You don't have to do all 10 questions. You could do 1 or 2. But really, these questions are there as better quality prompts for better quality feedback that it might help you with. And this is really just to help you structure that kind of conversation if you need it. All right, a few other things just in terms of feedback. So now we're kind of moving away a little bit from the AI. And these are some things I think that help when you are crafting feedback. And I'm suggesting today that you do use AI as a thinking partner to assist you if you need it. But there are going to be some things that you want to think about in order for it to give you a better result. In all the things that we've covered so far. But this is a little framework that I came up with to help in terms of just helping you with your feedback. So these are some things for you to consider. So is the feedback balanced? Now, I don't necessarily mean sandwich method of feedback here, which many of us would have been taught at some point in our leadership careers. But this is, are we, in general, giving both positive and constructive feedback? Or are we just giving constructive? Just be thinking about, you might even want to do a little reflection over the next week or so. Is my feedback balanced? Objective, what I'm sharing with the person, is it based on observation, preferably yours, right? Not just subjective judgments or things that you've heard or hearsay. That's useless, right? People will get defensive. And I think sometimes if we are delivering messages on behalf of others, then we should probably be encouraging those others to have the conversation if they can. Is it based on what you've seen personally? And therefore that helps with that objectivity. Is it specific, clear, concise, avoid ambiguity? And really think very, very clearly about, am I being ambiguous here because I am trying to soften this feedback? You might be intending to do a really nice thing, but actually causing an issue for the person by doing that. And then timely. We talked a little bit before about a feedback struggle is that often it's delayed because we go, oh, I'll get to it, in my next one-on-one conversation with them. Please don't, have that conversation as soon as practicable afterwards. This is a little conversation model. I know many of you will be familiar with the GROW model, which we've used forever. And that's where we think about the goal, the reality, the options, and then the way forward. This is a slightly shorter version, but also I think one that is pretty easy. 3 steps. For some reason, we like things in odd numbers, 3, 5, 7. So these are 3. But when I'm thinking about a conversation model, what's my intention, which we've covered? So you've got your feedback intentions. Then what am I noticing or have I noticed I want to share with this person that's creating the thing that I need to give them feedback about? And then finally, in Unlock, I'm going to ask questions. So I might have shared some things, some observations, then I'm going to ask questions because I want them to come up with the solution around what they're going to do around the feedback. Now, I won't always rely just on questions. Sometimes I'll throw in some statements and observations, particularly if the person, maybe is newer in their role, less experience. But if I'm dealing with someone who I know they're seasoned, they've got emotional intelligence, lots of self-awareness, then I'm going to ask them a lot of questions. Because that heavy lifting of unlocking the answer needs to be done by them. And when they do it, the answer that they come up with or the approach as a result of hearing that feedback is likely to stick. More so than what I could ever say to them. So intention, observation, unlock through questions. It's a really simple model. If you want to continue to use GROW, please do by all means. I find this Just a little easier because it's 3 steps versus 4. All right. There are some renovations going on at my house at the moment. Not a lot of painting, but I am always reminded, because I like to, I'm impatient by nature. I have always been reminded that when I shortcut and don't do, metaphorically, like an undercoat, paint peels off. Solution does not stick. And in the feedback conversations, it is all about the preparation. So use AI as that thinking partner to help you do the preparation work so you can get a sustainable solution at the end. But if we're not doing that preparation work, we're not likely really to get, some messaging that really helps and sticks. Of course, we did it all before AI, but we now have this tool available to us. Yeah. So if it's your thing and you want to explore it and use it, hopefully you've got some thoughts there around how you can use it. All right. Now, finally, I'd love to know what's one thing that you're going to take away and do from this masterclass. Bit of accountability. Oh, I didn't know Rita was going to ask me to declare a goal. Yes, I am. What's one thing you're going to do as a result of this masterclass? Yeah, nice, Nicola. The AI tools can handle it, right? They can handle the rigor. So do it. Yeah, share some. Yeah, absolutely good. Share some notes with the team. Peter's coming in. Yeah, great. Yeah, intentions, good. Yeah, no worries, Kelly. So hopefully there's some things there that you can be thinking about that you want to do differently. And, you spent an hour of your time, which I'm very grateful for. So hopefully there's something for you there. There's a little QR code. If anything that we've covered today has piqued your interest and you'd like to continue a conversation, please feel free, scan the QR code. It'll take you through to booking a discovery call. And that's on this topic or on any others that are deliberate leadership focused. So thank you. Thanks everyone for joining and for spending an hour with me today. I really appreciate it, particularly on Monday. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, AI refine and define. Beautiful. Thank you, Chris. Excellent. Have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you all very soon. Thank you.